My drunk wife attacked me during a traffic stop, accusing me of infidelity. A colleague set a trap to sabotage me, but I cleared my name alone. During my evening patrol, I spotted a black Hyundai swerving on the interstate at 90 miles per hour. When I eventually convinced the driver to pull over and get out, my jaw fell. My wife, drunker than an Irishman, was staring directly at me. But instead of looking guilty or sorry, she pounced at me, screaming, "You cheater!" and scratching her nails at my face. I tried to restrain her, but she kept striking me and trying to gauge my eyes, so I had no alternative but to forcefully handcuff her. I put her in the back seat and drove to the police station. Throughout the voyage, she continued saying our marriage was finished and refused to explain why she thought I cheated. My heart actually broke as I brought her in. I assumed she was experiencing another psychotic break. But then she noticed a picture of my coworker Sarah's face on the wall and started yelling, "That's her. That's the one you're sleeping with." I was really bewildered. Sarah and I sometimes patrolled together, but that was it. I waited in that station for hours, pleading with my wife that I had never strayed, but she would not listen. I was eventually compelled to leave her in the cell and go home. When I returned in the morning, my wife was still present, and I noticed Sarah in the break room. She rushed to me right away. "Oh my God, are you okay? Your wife is insane for saying all of that about us. Is there anything I can do to help?" I replied her, "Yes, there was." I took her to my wife and asked Sarah to explain that we had never slept together. "You're both lying. I found your lipstick in his patrol car." My wife slurred at Sarah, who took a step back, terrified. And before anyone else could speak up, my wife's parents arrived at the station. Her father poked his finger into my chest. "You're a piece of crap. How could you arrest your own wife?" Her mother was right behind him, tears flowing down her cheeks. "How dare you sleep with a coworker?" The entire station was now watching. The chief even came out, and I had to persuade him that I was handling things. Sarah then moved forward. She was typically a hothead in confrontation, yet her hands were raised quietly for some reason. "Sir and ma'am, there has been a major misunderstanding. Your son-in-law and I are only co-workers." My father-in-law spun around to confront her. "We know everything about you. Late night shifts and text messages. Harper showed us everything." I grasped my mother-in-law's arm. "Which text messages? I have never texted Sarah outside of business hours." My wife suddenly grabbed the bars. "January 18th, February 6th, and March 25th. You were messaging on all of these dates. Should I keep going?" I took out my phone and frantically scrolled through my texts, but found nothing. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." Sarah softly touched my shoulder. "This is quite confusing for you. Maybe someone spoofed your phone number." My father-in-law got in my face. "Get her out of that cell immediately. We are taking her home." I calmly reminded him that doing this in the police station was not the best idea. His face turned crimson. That's when the desk sergeant stepped in. "Sir, she blew an 8. Your daughter is facing DUI charges. The bail hearing isn't until noon. Then we will wait." Her mother spit. "And our lawyer will be hearing about the unjust detention." Sarah took me aside as they went to sit with my wife. "Listen, I believe you should go home. Check on your son. This is getting very unpleasant, and you appear fatigued." She was correct. I drove home in a trance, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Alex was still in his jammies on the couch when I stepped in, despite the fact that it was nearly 10 a.m. "Dad." His voice was little. "What happened?" Mom cried. "Is she okay?" I sat down next to him, attempting to find the appropriate words. "Mom made an error in driving when she shouldn't have. She is safe, but upset. She kept chatting about Sarah on the phone with Grandma," Alex explained. My blood ran cold. "Do you know Miss Sarah?" He nodded. "Yes, she did bring us cookies once when you were working overtime." After she departed, Mom became quite angry. I felt my stomach drop. "When was this?" "About a month ago." "Maybe." Mom put the cookies in the trash and cried. I stood up, pacing now. Did Sarah mention anything to Mom? I do not know. They chatted at the door for a bit. Mom looked really disturbed thereafter. None of it made sense. I checked my patrol car while Alex was watching TV. Sure enough, there was a tube of lipstick under the passenger seat. But I had never seen Sarah wearing lipstick. Not once in 2 years. Back inside, my phone vibrated with a text from Sarah. "Your wife posted bail. Her parents paid. I attempted to settle things down for you, but she refused to listen. They are currently en route to the house. I'm so sorry this is happening to you." I texted her back, asking why she never notified me she had come to my house. Suddenly, I received no response. 6 minutes have passed. Then 10. She finally texted back. I merely wanted to drop off the shift schedule. I had no idea it would make her upset. My stomach sank. We'd been receiving schedules digitally for 2 years. Before I could fully comprehend what this meant, my wife and her parents arrived at the door. When I heard the automobile doors slam, my hands started shaking. As I approached the front door through the peephole, I noticed Harper standing there, with her parents flanking her like guardians. Her eyes were red and puffy from sobbing, and her hair was still a mess from the detention cell. I took a deep breath before opening the door. Harper pushed by me inside the home without saying anything. Her father jabbed his finger into my chest, which stung. "You're about to explain everything right now," he hissed. I took a step back, attempting to keep things quiet for Alex, who was still on the couch. Harper noticed him and dashed over, dropping to her knees and pulling him into a tight hug. Alex placed his arms around her neck and began crying. "Mommy," she said, holding him close and staring at me over his head with hatred in her eyes. I ordered Alex to go to his room and watch cartoons, but he held to Harper tighter. "I'm scared." He sobbed into her shoulder. My mother-in-law walked forward and began counting with her fingers. She listed the text messages, the lipstick in my car, and Sarah's visit to our house with cookies. I tried to explain that I hadn't sent any texts and had no idea about the lipstick. They would not allow me to finish a single statement. Harper's father kept interrupting, and her mother shook her head as if she didn't believe what I said. Harper rose up, still holding Alex, and took out her phone with her free hand. She scrolled through it and then pushed the screen into my face. There were screenshots of text messages that appeared to have originated from my phone number and addressed Sarah. The messages were flirtatious and suggested meeting up after work. One stated he couldn't wait to see her again, and another thought she looked stunning. My stomach fell when I realized I had never written any of those messages. I took out my own phone and checked my text history with Sarah. There was nothing there save a work schedule from months ago. Harper spotted my screen and exclaimed that I had clearly removed them to cover my tracks. Her father stated that he would contact the phone provider directly in order to obtain the correct information. Alex cried harder the whole time, burying his face in Harper's shoulder. When I began working late nights, my mother-in-law often stated that she knew something was wrong. Harper quickly grabbed a glass from the coffee table and threw it against the wall. It shattered into bits, and Alex began screaming. I realized things were spiraling out of control, and our son was going to be scarred. I told them I'd stay somewhere else tonight to allow everyone time to relax. Harper claimed that if I stepped out that door, I would be confessing my guilt. Her parents agreed, saying that leaving would indicate I was a cheater. But I could see Alex shaking and crying, and I knew one of us had to think straight. I walked to my bedroom and grabbed a suitcase, packing some clothing and my phone charger. Harper pursued me, yelling that I was ruining our family for a lady at work. I informed her again that nothing had occurred to Sarah, but she would not listen. Her father stood in the doorway, trying to prevent me from leaving. I had to squeeze by him while he called me whatever term he could think of. As I approached my car, Harper screamed from the porch that our marriage was ended. I drove away, my hands shaking on the wheel, unsure where I was heading. I pulled into a parking lot and contacted James Carter, the department's union representative. He answered on the third ring, and I told him what had happened. He ordered me to document everything and not tell anyone at work about it. He stated the department would probably put me on desk duty after they learned about the arrest. He also suggested that I write down every recent interaction I had with Sarah. I thanked him and drove around for an additional 25 minutes, trying to think. Finally, I stopped into a cheap motel off the highway and booked a room for the night. The room smelled like old cigarettes, and the bed groaned when I sat down. I grabbed a notebook from my purse, and began writing what I remembered. I described how Sarah usually caressed my shoulder when she spoke to me. How she found out about Harper's arrest before anybody else did, and how she arrived at the station just as her parents did. She volunteered for every overtime shift while I was working. She always sat next to me during briefings, even when other seats were available. She once delivered coffee to my car without asking. She laughed at all of my ridiculous jokes, even when they weren't amusing. I wrote till my hand cramped, and I ended up with 3 pages of notes. Looking at everything written down made me sick to my stomach. How had I not seen this pattern before now? I kept writing about the cookie incident, which Alex had described. Sarah had never mentioned going to my house. She pretended as if she had no idea where I lived, yet she had been talking to Harper for 14 minutes, according to my memory. And now she had lied about bringing paper timetables when we had always used digital ones. Harper was texting me, calling me names and expressing her desire for a divorce. I didn't say anything because I knew it would just make things worse right now. The next morning, my phone rang while I was lying in that horrible motel bed, and it was James phoning to inform me that the department wanted me on modified duty beginning immediately. He stated the chief was concerned about liability if I went out on patrol while distracted by all of this personal things. It made logical, but it still stung that I couldn't do my regular job. James told me to come to his office at 10 a.m. so we could discuss how to safeguard my work and reputation from whatever was going on here. When I arrived, he had a legal pad full of notes and was laying out his plan step by step. The first step was to obtain my phone records from the carrier to establish that I had not sent the texts Harper mentioned. He made the call right in front of me and placed an official request stating that we required them for a department inquiry. Then he took out his calendar and scheduled me for an internal affairs interview in 3 days, making my stomach drop. He spent the next hour teaching me what to expect, and emphasizing the need of sticking to facts rather than guessing why Sarah did anything. That evening, after leaving his office, I couldn't help but drive by my house to see whether things had settled down. Harper's parents' car was still in the driveway, and all of the lights inside were turned on, implying that they were all still there, discussing how bad I was. I took out my phone and texted Harper, asking if I could contact Alex to say goodnight because I hadn't. I had not seen him in more than a day. She didn't respond for 6 whole hours, and when she finally did, it was only 2 words: he was asleep. I looked at the clock, and it was only 7 p.m., so I knew she was lying. But calling her out on it would just make matters worse. Back at the motel, I took my notebook and began creating a thorough timeline of every occasion I'd worked with Sarah in the previous few months. I wrote down how she routinely volunteered for overtime shifts when she knew I was also working them. She always sat next to me during briefings, even when there were plenty of other unoccupied chairs in the room. She brought coffee to my patrol car at least once a week, without me asking. She knew my favorite sandwich from the deli down the street and would occasionally get one for me. Looking at all of these small details written down revealed a pattern so obvious that I felt dumb for not noticing it sooner. The following day, I had to go to the station to fill out papers for my change duty status, and the entire environment felt altered. When I walked past people I had worked with for years in the corridor, they didn't look me in the eyes. The desk sergeant, who typically joked with me, simply nodded and handed me the forms without saying anything. Harper's arrest and charges against me and Sarah were widely publicized. 3 days later, I sat in the internal affairs interview room across from David Thomas, whom I had only met once at a department barbecue. He questioned me repeatedly about my working connection with Sarah and whether we had ever breached professional limits. I replied that we were just patrol partners who worked well together, but he kept asking why she was coming to my house with cookies. He took out a folder and gave me the identical screenshots Harper had given me of text messages with my name on them. I assured him again that I had never sent them and requested if they could look through Sarah's phone for any apps that may mimic phone numbers. David Thomas wrote everything down, but his face remained blank, so I couldn't tell if he believed me or thought I was lying. After 2 hours of inquiries, I was about to leave when I remembered what Alex had mentioned about Harper and Sarah conversing at the door for a long time. I took out my phone in the parking lot and called James Carter, explaining that we wanted to find out exactly what Sarah had said to my wife that day at our home. James contacted me back within 6 minutes and suggested that we investigate to see if any of our neighbors had doorbell cameras from when Sarah stopped by with the cookies. It was worth a shot, even if 1 month is a long time to keep footage. I drove directly back to my neighborhood and began knocking on doors. The first 2 neighbors either did not have cameras or had previously removed old recordings. Mr. Johnson owned the 3rd residence and worked in IT, so everything was backed up to the cloud. He welcomed me in, and we sat at his computer while he went over old footage from February. After about 25 minutes of searching, he discovered it. Sarah stood at my front door, clutching a container of cookies. The timestamp indicated she stood there for 14 minutes, which made little sense for simply dropping something off. Mr. Johnson continued to watch videos until he came across one that showed someone leaning into my police car, which was parked in the driveway. The person's face was not visible, but they were clearly tampering with something inside the car. I begged him to send me both clips right away and thanked him around 50 times. My hands were shaking as I forwarded everything to James, along with a message outlining what we'd discovered. He wrote back, saying this was exactly what we needed and that he was sending it directly to Internal Affairs with an official request to investigate Sarah. For the first time since this disaster began, I felt like someone might believe me. That night, around 9 p.m., my phone rang. It was Harper's father. He began ranting before I had even said hi. He threatened to call every news station in town if I didn't stop talking about Sarah and let Harper come home. He described me as a corrupt cop who arrested his own wife to cover up an affair. I put him on speaker and started recording, as James had instructed. Harper's father started making threats for 6 minutes straight. When he eventually hung up, I saved the recording and forwarded it to James. The next morning, I received a call from the station stating that Internal Affairs wanted to see me immediately. When I arrived, David Thomas informed me that they had summoned Sarah in for interrogation based on the film I had provided. They also required to conduct a comprehensive forensic sweep of my patrol car, which meant I had to turn it in immediately. Without a patrol car, I couldn't even perform desk duties. So, I was effectively suspended without being officially suspended. David stated that it would take at least a week to process everything. I left the station, feeling bewildered, and called James, who advised me to seek a family lawyer immediately. He recommended Charlotte Morgan, a specialist in custody issues involving law enforcement. I met her that afternoon at her downtown office. She reviewed all of my data and concluded that Harper's emotional state and false charges justified our request for supervised visitation. The thought of having supervision to see my own son made me nauseous, but Charlotte explained that it was the only way to ensure that I could see Alex on a regular basis. She began preparing the paperwork straight in her office. We filed everything with the court the next day, requesting supervised visits twice a week. Charlotte claimed Harper's drinking and unstable conduct made her unreliable around Alex. The court clerk claimed we'd have a hearing date within 3 weeks. 4 days later, James called to tell the forensics team had finished with my police car. They discovered that the lipstick tube contained no definite fingerprints, only blurred partials that could belong to anyone. However, they discovered traces of a scent on it that did not match anything Harper owned. When I asked how they knew what perfume Harper used, James explained that they had obtained a warrant to test objects from our residence. The whole thing was becoming more invasive by the day. The best news came about a week later, when the phone company records arrived. James called me almost roaring with enthusiasm. The data showed that no texts were ever received from my number to Sarah's on any of the dates Harper claimed. Someone had undoubtedly falsified those texts, implying that someone was purposefully attempting to damage my marriage. James thought this was significant because it demonstrated I was being set up. We now had actual proof that someone was lying, and it was not me. He quickly filed copies with Internal Affairs and forwarded them to Charlotte for the custody proceedings. Harper's lawyer attempted to prevent the evidence, claiming it was obtained fraudulently, but the judge permitted it. Things were finally turning in my favor. The doorbell footage, bogus texts, and placed lipstick all pointed to someone attempting to frame me. Sarah was still working, although she had been assigned to a different shift pending the investigation. According to other cops, she was telling everyone I was crazy and blaming her for my marital difficulties. But the evidence spoke louder than her words. Internal Affairs broadened their inquiry and began looking into Sarah's employment history and any more complaints. Charlotte stated all of this evidence would be useful in family court since it demonstrated I was the victim, not the cheater. She was putting together a compelling case for why I needed equal custody after everything was settled. But for now, all I wanted was to see my son. The supervised visitation hearing was scheduled for the following Monday, so I spent the whole weekend preparing what I wanted to say. Monday morning, I stepped into the courthouse in my nicest suit, attempting to keep my hands firm. The judge reviewed the documents as Harper sat with her parents on the opposite side of the room. The hearing lasted less than 25 minutes, and the court granted me supervised visits twice a week to the community center. Harper's lawyer got up and handed the court another bundle of papers. He was seeking an immediate protective order, saying that I was harassing Harper by investigating her claims about Sarah. Charlotte rushed up and handed the court all of our proof, including the phone records that proved the texts were phony. The court read everything and dismissed the protection order, stating that I had the right to defend myself against false claims. Harper's parents spoke angrily to their lawyer as we exited the courthouse. 3 days later, we all gathered for mediation in a small conference room at the courthouse. The mediator attempted to encourage Harper to talk, but her father repeatedly interrupted and answered for her. Harper's mother would grab her arm whenever she tried to say anything on her own. The mediator ended the discussion after 40 minutes, noting that Harper seems unable to speak freely with her parents there. She suggested Harper go to individual counseling without family members. Sarah texted me that afternoon, stating she was sorry for everything and hoped we could chat soon. I immediately presented it to James Carter, who advised me to ban her phone number straight away while